And welcome everyone to Beyond the Forecast. I am Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens, and we are continuing Boater Safety Week, National Boater Safety Week. As temperatures are starting to warm up, we're getting the boats ready. People are coming north, getting into the Great Lakes, getting into the rivers, getting into inland lakes. It doesn't matter, but we want to bring to you information on boater safety, but also on our Great Lakes, on our inland lakes, on our rivers, and what you can do to prep for that the correct way as we still have cold lake temperatures, as we are starting to warm up, and as our weather continues to be driven by these bodies of water as well. So we're going to continue to focus on that today. Meteorologist Haley Fischetti sits down with Wexford County Deputy Sheriff Chad Sprick and talks to him about boater safety and some things to remember as we get set to hit the water. So great interview that will be coming up here for the first segment. And then I will take you into Meteorology 101. The water cycle, especially here in the Great Lakes. How does that impact us, whether it's summer, spring, fall, or winter, and just exactly what we can see with the water cycle here in northern Michigan, because believe it or not, it is a huge impact on our weather as we head through the season. So we'll break that water cycle down for you and then also take you back into one of the Beyond the Forecast podcast, live streaming podcast segments that we have shot here throughout the weeks. All right, before we get into that, though, let's talk about this day in weather history. Now, it might not be the one that you think I'm going to pick, but let's also not forget on this day in weather history, May 20th, 2022, northern Michigan was impacted by a very large tornado. In fact, a tornado that we don't typically see here this far north, but it was, like I mentioned just previously, Meteorology 101. It was what you open a textbook and see the definition of tornado, an image from radar, storm up top, hook echo, tornado. That is exactly what we saw set up and take place and move right through downtown Gaylord 3 years ago. And with that day, I was here breaking in and staying with the tornado, and then eventually went up to Gaylord to see what had occurred and get information from the higher-ups up there. It was eye-opening experience, put it that way, as a meteorologist seeing that take shape, but also seeing the impacts it has locally to a place where I call home. My neighbors in the backyard were impacted by what was an absolutely monster of a storm and tornado, and to see that will never leave. But we can build off it and remember May 20th, 2022. And I'm happy to say we have instituted things here in my field that hopefully we never see something like this impact us the way it did before. But if it does, we will be ready and be prepared. That is the big thing. Another day in weather history fun fact for you. On this day, May 20th, 1916, a tornado struck the town of Codell, Kansas. All right, so May 20th, 1916, a tornado struck the town of Codell, Kansas. On the same day, the next year, 1917, Codell was hit again by a tornado. And then again on the exact same day in 1918, a tornado again ran through the town of Codell. Back to back to back tornadoes on the exact same day. May 20th, 1916, May 20th, 1917, May 20th, 1918, Codell was hit by 3 separate tornadoes. That's insane. I've never heard of this or something like this even. Very rarely do you see a tornado move through your area, let alone 3 exact days, 3 years in a row. That's insane. All right, Monday, trivia time. We asked you the coldest temperature ever recorded in the world. Was it 250 degrees below zero, 110 degrees below zero, 129 degrees below zero, or 205 degrees below zero? The answer is 129 degrees below zero. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Antarctica. I'll have to check my records on that, but I believe it was the South Pole. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken again, it was within the last 10 years. So 129 degrees below zero is the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth. Today, we are asking you, how many tornadoes does the United States average a year? Is it 1,000, 900, 7, or 1,200? QR code, hit that. Scan it with your phone. If you know the answer, weigh in. If you think you know the answer, also weigh in. So as you choose the answer, it'll do its little math and give you the correct answer, but we'll also have the correct answer for you tomorrow on Beyond the Forecast. And to be honest with you, I think the answer will shock you. How many we average on a yearly basis here in the United States. Not to mention, the United States is the biggest producer of tornadoes in the world. All right, viewer photo of the day. Brought to you, as always, by Great Rooms. Today, we have a picture sent in to us from Sheila Dinger, and it is titled Frankfurt Sunset. It is an absolutely gorgeous picture. Thank you so much, Sheila, for sending this in. A reason why we live here in the Great Lakes. You get views like this, of course, so we always say it, but sunrise, sunset, beautiful lakes, just gorgeous scenery all around Northern Michigan, and you get things like this. So Sheila, thank you so much for sending that picture in, and thank you to Great Rooms for sponsoring viewer photo of the day. All right, let's get to our first segment, shall we? Meteorologist Haley Fischetti sits down with Wexford County Deputy Sheriff Chad Sprick to talk about boater safety as we're getting closer to that warmer air and boating season. We'll have more details on that in that interview right after the break.
Welcome back to Beyond the Forecast. It's meteorologist Haley Fischetti, and today I am joined by Deputy Sheriff Chad Sprick. Thank you so much, Chad, for joining me today. I know it's cold. We talked about it right before the interview, but it is Boat Safety Awareness Week, and people are getting excited to use their boat. So thank you for joining me today to talk a little bit about boat safety.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess as we head into the coming weeks, people getting ready to maybe clean up their boats, starting to maybe go fishing a little bit more, what are some tips that you have or that you see a lot that people should be aware of as we head into that season?
The biggest thing is make sure you have enough personal flotation devices. You need one for each person on board, and just have good, safe fun. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Now, what is some common problems that you see as we head into those months? I know we always hear those freak stories or crazy calls. What are some of the common things that you see every year?
I usually end up having to tow a few boats off the water, just help them out. You know, first time they've had them out for the season, the boat's not running good or it breaks down, or the boat registration has expired. It expires the end of March. So a lot of people don't realize that. They get out on the water and just go out there and remind them, they make it easy nowadays to be able to do that online.
Yeah, that's a great tip that you have to make sure on top of making sure you have the safety precautions, you have to make sure you also have the right paperwork before you go
Correct.
out on the waters. Yeah. Now, what is your day-to-day when you are working with maybe the marine life here in Northern Michigan? What do you do every day?
In the morning before the lakes get busy, I'll just tour around, check out the boat launches, stop and talk to people, give them a couple friendly reminders, make sure they have their life jackets and check out their registrations and such, and just tell them to have fun. And then I'll get out on the water and I'll just stop and talk to people, check in, see how the fishing's doing, or if they're having fun, any issues. I make a lot of new friends every summer, and it's a good time.
See your regulars every once in a while out in the water?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, what are some tips that you have as we head into Boat Safety Week, talking about awareness?
Well, if they're first-time boaters, hopefully they've taken the online safety course to get their certificates, depending on their ages. And the biggest thing the biggest complaints we get are personal watercraft, jet skis, Sea-Doos, that type of deal. Sometimes they get a little too close to people, and that concerns, because the pontoon boaters aren't going near as fast as the jet skiers. Right. So we're just trying to get everybody to get along, like I said before, just have some good, clean fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chad, for taking time to talk about boat safety. It's all great reminders, the paperwork, and just at the end of the day, having safe fun. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Haley. And thank you to Deputy Sheriff Chad Sprick for giving us that amazing information. Now, coming up next, we're going to take you into the water cycle and explain why it's such a big part of the Great Lakes. We'll have that right after the break. And welcome everyone to Beyond the Forecast. Today we are taking you to Meteorology 101, maybe even way before Meteorology 101, right? I mean, elementary school, we start learning about the water cycle. Now here in the Great Lakes, we have a lot of water. And there's a lot of cycles of that water across northern Michigan, and it does play into our seasons, whether it is spring, summer, fall, or winter. The water cycle is a big player, and that has to do with our 4 seasons and our weather patterns across the Great Lakes. So let's start off where we probably all started off in elementary school, the water cycle. The water cycle starts with a body of water and evaporation, right? That water starts to evaporate, moves up into the air, starts condensing as clouds. So we go from evaporation to condensation, and also in the middle, transpiration. The plants and organisms on the surface start also breathing water into the air. But as it condensates, it starts moving inland, and it starts to give us rain, snow, sleet, mix, precipitation. And that precipitation falls to the surface, and then you have runoff back into the body of water. Now, there's other ways that you can see precipitation or moisture into these bodies of water, right? If you have a storm system moving in across Lake Michigan, it'll run right into the body of water, or if it's raining from a system moving in from the south in Michigan, it'll rain and then start into the body of water. But normally here in the Great Lakes, you start with evaporation to condensation to precipitation, and then back into those bodies of water from which they came. So let's start breaking this down a little bit. Evaporation. It is the most important to Earth's water cycle, and also really to the Great Lakes water cycle. Think about how much of our Great Lakes evaporate, but then turn back into moisture that falls inland and then returns to those bodies of water. A lot of it. Lake effect snow is this process. It's just in the winter. A lot of the lake effect rain showers, whether it's in the spring or whether it is in the fall, again, same process. Low pressure systems, which spin up through the Great Lakes, grab that moisture over the lakes and drop it right back, for the most part, in Michigan before it moves east. So water is transferred to atmosphere via evaporation. So that warmer air, warmer water starts to evaporate, goes into the air, right? And then we start to see clouds form, condensation. So as that moisture is rising higher and higher and higher, temperatures are cooling off, getting cooler, cooler, cooler as it continues to climb. And as that evaporation is getting cooler, it turns into clouds or condensation. That leads to cloud formation. So as more moisture continues to add to those clouds, you're getting the moisture inside of that cloud. And once it gets too heavy, rain, precipitation. That delivers water back down to the surface, whether it's in rain form, snow form, sleet form, hail form, doesn't matter what form it is precipitation. And then once it gets back to the surface, you either see it run back into the bodies of water from which it came, or the tributaries, rivers, smaller lakes. For the most part, it will all end up back in the Great Lakes, or in the water table across the Great Lakes. Now, the one thing that we didn't see, that you saw on the first slide, that we didn't mention in those 3 parts right there, evapotranspiration. That starts the cycle again. You might be a little confused. But evapotranspiration, when that moisture, that precipitation falls on the plants, water is transferred to the atmosphere via evaporation plus transpiration. So I did a video last summer called corn sweat. You may have heard of this. Corn sweat is the process of evapotranspiration, and all of the water that corn and crops release in late summer can actually make it even warmer than it feels outside because of all of that water from the cornfields just to our west, southwest, even to our south here in Michigan. That moisture gets into the air, starts creating higher dew points, which makes it feel warmer. That's because of evapotranspiration. So evapotranspiration is the moisture that we just received, that precipitation, the plants giving that off creating more moisture to evaporate back into the atmosphere. So corn transpiration, in fact, this is exactly what we were just talking about, is increased by wind transport. So let's move over to the Central Plains, shall we? Or the Corn Belt states, where they have all these mature stalks of corn. They are releasing a ton of water, right? Well, wind is going to push that. So it increases the humidity levels. If you increase the dew point with the moisture from corn, you got to have a lot of corn, right? Well, yes, we have a lot of corn in the Corn Belt states. So you take an acre of corn and it is releasing upwards of 4,000 gallons a day of water into the atmosphere. So 1 acre of corn, upon the millions of acres we do have in the United States, 1 acre of that can release 4,000 of gallons of water into the atmosphere. So all of that moisture is rising. And as you have all that moisture out there, it's making it feel much warmer. But it's putting that into the atmosphere. If it's putting it into the atmosphere, all it's going to take is a trigger to start to condense it and then start to turn it into thunderstorms. Evaporation, condensation, also halfway in there once it starts raining, evapotranspiration. But precipitation falls back to the surface and then runoff back into those bodies of water. Think about lake effect. Here in the Great Lakes, lake effect snow, which is the majority of our moisture in some seasons, that is picked up from the lakes. Condensation condenses into those clouds, moves inland, drops all that moisture back to the surface. Now, granted, it doesn't melt right away, right? It starts to accumulate. But what happens in the spring? We start melting that back into the table. So you're not adding water to the already Great Lakes. You're just returning that water to the Great Lakes. It evaporates, condensates, falls, returns. So in northern Michigan, we are unique in the fact that we produce and reuse the majority of our water. So there you go. Fun facts for you. A little bit of weather, a little bit of science. That is the water cycle. We'll be right back with more Beyond the Forecast. And welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Forecast. This last segment, we always show you our live streaming podcasts or segments from our live streaming podcast that we do normally every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Now, last week, we unfortunately couldn't get to one. Same for this week, as we have some big things going on, not only weather department-wise, but whole station-wise, coming up here in the next 2 weeks that we kind of have to attend to. So with that being said, we look back at some of the segments that you can find on the 910 News YouTube channel, the Beyond the Forecast Facebook page, where we do these live. You can go check these out yourself. Not to mention, we are also trying very hard to get these up where you take in podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. We're trying to get those up there as well, whether you can watch them or just listen to them, or just put them on and not watch, but listen. So you can find those right now, 910 News YouTube channel or Beyond the Forecast. So with all that being said, here's a segment from one of the 6 podcasts that we have shot so far. Check it out.
You know what goes into fire weather. So there's a few ingredients that you want to really pay attention to if you have plans of saying, you know, burning the yard down or ditches. I know my dad and I, my dad grew up in Merrill down in Saginaw County, and they have big ditches where all the fields are. And we would go in there and rake the ditches and then burn them.
Right,
and
okay.
so keep the growth down. And like if that's something you want to do, rake the yard and burn it, like it's fine to do that.
Yeah.
Just make sure the conditions are good.
Exactly.
And just make sure you have burn permits or they're being issued for your county. Because if we have windy conditions,
Which we do in the spring.
Oh, yes, very windy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been windy all winter, let alone going into spring. If we have very dry conditions, low humidity levels.
Low humidity.
That is fuel. So there's a triangle that you can think of when it comes to fire.
So there you go. And you can catch those every Tuesday at 10 a.m. I promise you it'll be more consistent as things start to change here over the few weeks. But thank you for joining Beyond the Forecast. We do truly appreciate it. I am Chief Meteorologist Michael Stevens. For meteorologist John Gross and meteorologist Haley Fischetti, thank you for joining us here on this Tuesday. Now, tomorrow we'll be back 4:30 in the afternoon for more Beyond the Forecast, where we have that little bit of science, a little bit of weather, and give you the science of the weather that you see or maybe also don't see on a daily basis. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good, stay safe, take care. We'll see everybody on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.